Joe Biden appears to be, at least in his rhetoric, going full dictator on us, complete with the optics of dictatorship and all. Let's start with the image, which I'm sure you've seen. This is Biden kind of holding both his arms up, very much fascist style. You have all kinds of imagery of Mussolini doing this. You have Adolf Hitler. One of Hitler's standard postures was not the two-hand, but the one-handed fist, where he'd be kind of putting his fist up here. And so Biden had almost a blood red background, and he had soldiers, two Marines standing on either side, in a kind of creepy, nocturnal imagery that was downright chilling, downright scary. And even people who aren't all that political, like the Barstool guy, he's like, hey, I'm watching sports, I was flipping the channels, and I see Biden, and he goes, I'm not even going to talk about the content of his speech, I'm just talking about, he goes, the guy looks like Hitler. And then, of course, liberals were like, wait a minute, George Bush posed with the military behind him. It's a completely different. If you look at the two pictures, George Bush is standing there, and he's got Marines behind him. It's a daytime address. And the point is not that having the U.S. military makes you a dictator. Of course not. But it is the imagery of, the fascist imagery of the blood red, the fists, and the military used in such a way that it's essentially a warning to you, warning to the citizens. Look at the force I've got behind me. Now, this is not mere imagery, because Biden, of course, has blasted Americans who support gun rights by basically saying, hey, listen, what's the point of having gun rights? He goes, if you really want to take on the government, you want to fight government tyranny, he goes, you need an F-15. Your gun is not going to do it. And this has been a standard line of Biden, but and of course, what makes all of this so bitterly ironic is that Biden is the one who left F-15s for the Taliban in Afghanistan. There were some commentators who pointed that out. What I found even more alarming was basically the idea of a president in a democracy threatening his own citizens by saying, in effect, we got the F-15s, we got the fighter planes, we got the nuclear weapons, and you don't. So, in other words, we are able to overpower you if we want to. And for this reason, you need to grovel and cower before Big Brother, before, you may say, the Biden-run regime. Biden has been implying as if that anyone who disagrees with him, anyone who didn't vote for him, at one point his spokesman even said, listen, if you're not in the majority, you're an extremist. And they're trying to make anyone who supports Trump, anyone who's part of the MAGA movement, anyone who's part of the mainstream of the Republican Party. See, it'd be one thing if the people who supported Trump were 1% of the Republicans, and then Biden could say, well, listen, I'm not against an honest Republican opposition. I'm not against the mainstream of the Republican Party. I'm just against a few of these extremists. But no, Biden is trying to classify the mainstream of the Republican Party as beyond the pale. Apparently, the only Republicans he likes are people like Liz Cheney, who are ultimately doing the bidding of the Biden regime itself. So it's a one-party state. That's the underlying philosophy that Biden is pushing. One of the themes that Biden, but also other leftists have taken up is this idea that it is a mark of fascism to be an election denier. Now, first of all, putting aside the kind of comicality of the term election denier, remember the Democrats questioned the 2016 election, they questioned the 2004 election, they questioned the 2000 election. Were they election deniers? No, they were arguing about whether or not the votes were being legitimately counted. They raised issues of fraud. Ultimately, those issues were dealt with. So questioning an election doesn't make you an election denier. You're not against elections. You don't deny elections. You're trying to make sure that elections are carried out properly. But here's the point. What does this have to do with fascism? As far as I know, there is no fascist movement that can be identified as questioning the results of an election. First of all, if you take Nazi Germany, for starters, the Nazis were the largest political party in Germany at the time that Hitler was made the chancellor. They didn't have to question elections. They actually won the election. They were the largest party. Similarly, Mussolini was constitutionally assigned his position by the king. So Mussolini had led this kind of march on Rome, and this led to a recognition that the fascists had become very powerful inside and outside the government. Mussolini was offered a position. Again, this was done by legitimate constitutional authority, admittedly by the strange system that they have in Italy. So the point being that denying elections is not a fascist move, but manipulating and stealing elections, overriding the will of the people, trampling on their rights, yeah, these are actually hallmarks of fascism, and those are coming really from the Biden regime itself. What to me is even scarier than Biden is all the little Nazis who are cheering him on. I literally think, and this may seem a little bit harsh, but I don't think it is, that if Biden proposed a kind of final solution, Biden says, listen, you know what, these Trump people have got to go. Let's try to segregate them. Let's try to incarcerate them. And quite frankly, if we need to, we might have to get rid of them altogether. You'd have a lot of people going, yeah, I think that's necessary. Well, that's necessary to save democracy. So think about this. They're trying to save democracy from the voters.